Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you to Day 3 of our conference, as we convene the CHCI session on small businesses, preparing for resiliency in an age of growing uncertainty and natural disasters. This panel will feature leading experts who will shine light on how small business owners can prepare as they continue to face an unpredictable business environment due to the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Dennis Gonzalez, and I'm the Director of Leadership Programs at CHCI since 2018. On behalf of CHCI, I would like to thank BBVA, Edison International, H&R Block, and LPL Financial for their generous support of this session. Before we begin our panel, it is my distinct privilege to introduce our panel host, Congresswoman Nidia Velazquez, representing New York's 7th Congressional District, Elizabeth Dubers from BBVA, and our moderator, Nicole Quiroga. Congresswoman Velazquez has made history several times during her tenure in Congress. In 1992, she was the first Puerto Rican woman elected to the United States House of Representatives. In 1998, she was named ranking Democratic member of the House Small Business Committee, making her the first Hispanic woman to serve as ranking member of a full House committee. And in 2006, she was named chairwoman of the House Small Business Committee, making her the first Latina to chair a full congressional committee. Congresswoman Velazquez has been a vocal advocate of American small business and entrepreneurship. She has championed numerous legislative priorities supporting small businesses, including access to capital, expanding federal contracting opportunities, healthcare and pension reform, among others. Congresswoman Velazquez was named as the inaugural Woman of the Year by Hispanic Business Magazine in recognition of her national influence in both political and business sectors, and for her longtime support of minority enterprise. Next, you will hear welcome remarks from Elizabeth Dubers, Small to Medium Enterprise Network Executive for BBVA. She has over 15 years of experience supporting key business initiatives specifically focused on small business sector. To help us moderate this important and timely discussion, we are delighted to have Nicole Quiroga, President and CEO of the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. In her current position, Ms. Quiroga promotes the Chamber in the community and builds positive relationships with members, elected officials, and business leaders while advocating for the economic growth and development of Hispanic businesses in the region. Welcome, and thank you, Nicole, for moderating this panel of leading experts and distinguished guests. I hope you enjoy this session, and don't forget to continue the conversation on social media using the hashtag CHCIHHM20. Please welcome our panel host, Congresswoman Velazquez.
Good afternoon. I am Nidia Velazquez, and I represent New York's 7th Congressional District in the House of Representatives. I'm also the chairwoman of the Small Business Committee, a senior member of the Financial Services Committee, and a member of the Natural Resources Committee. First, I want to thank you all for being here and for the work you do to improve and empower our communities through vibrant local economies. I would also like to thank Marco Davis and everyone at CHCI for organizing this conference. I am very proud of the contributions Latino business owners have made to the U.S. economy. According to a recent report, as of June 2019, there were 4.65 million Latino-owned companies, representing 14% of the 33 million U.S. businesses. Latino business growth regularly outpaces that of other U.S. businesses. In fact, Latino-owned businesses grew 40% from 2012 to 2018, more than twice the 18% growth rate of other U.S. firms. Additionally, in October 2019, Forbes reported that the average annual revenue of Latino-owned businesses increased to $480,000 in 2019, up from $327,000, an improvement of 46.5%. This shows the strong growth the Latino business community was enjoying prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on communities, both from a health and an economic perspective. It is critically important to ensure the progress and growth of our Latino entrepreneurs is not lost. I am fighting every day in Congress to ensure our public policies promote a strong recovery for all small businesses. We know most small businesses lack resiliency and disaster recovery plans, which makes it harder for them to quickly return to normal activity after a disaster like this pandemic. Many minority-owned businesses also face additional barriers in accessing affordable capital, exacerbating challenges to their recovery. That is why I have fought to include important funding set aside in the Paycheck Protection Program for community-based lenders such as CDFIs, microlenders, and MDIs. These entities have much deeper relationships with minority-owned businesses than the big banks. We know that as many as 60% of small businesses may be forced to close their doors due to the pandemic. Because these firms have fewer resources to prepare for and respond to these circumstances, we must work together to find solutions that enable these businesses stay open and ultimately survive the pandemic. Today's panel will feature leading experts who will highlight the ways small business owners can enhance their resiliency as they continue to face this unpredictable business environment. I look forward to hearing from the expert panel as they share their lessons learned and insights on how to best manage, operate, and sustain business under unprecedented circumstances. Again, thank you for joining, and thank you to everyone on the panel for sharing your stories with all of us.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Dobers, and I'm the Small to Medium Enterprise Network Executive for BBVA USA. I've worked in banking specifically with small businesses for over 15 years. At BBVA, we recognize that small businesses serve as engines for growth and economic prosperity in communities across the country, particularly in Latino communities. Recent events, including the ongoing pandemic, have highlighted the need for small businesses to be prepared to respond to events that may interrupt their business. That means establishing the partnerships, processes, and organizational structure now to take advantage of opportunities as they arise in emergency situations. I'm very proud of the fact that my team at BBVA was able to create some of those opportunities for our small business partners at the outset of the pandemic through our work distributing government funds from the CARES Act. BBVA was among the first banks to open our online portal applicants for the Paycheck Protection Program, also known as PPP. We truly felt this program was our call to do everything we could for the small businesses that make up the fabric of our communities, and it was a call we took to heart. I saw firsthand that the businesses that were prepared to act quickly as a result of that pre-work were best able to take advantage of the limited funding and make the most of the opportunity. As part of the PPP program, we funded over $3 billion in small business loans in less than 60 days, processing more than 22,000 applications and impacting approximately 360,000 jobs. While we consistently punch above our weight class for SBA loans and we're a top 15 producer in SBA by dollar volume, in the case of PPP, we loaned in less than 60 days what we might typically do over the course of 10 years. With PPP, we were even able to begin funding loans in just 3 days after the program opened up for applications. We are proud of our strong and solid commitment to small businesses, and we were proud to play such an outsized role in the PPP program. At BBVA, we know that strong, resilient small businesses help forge strong communities and a solid economy. We will continue to look for ways to support small businesses, and we are proud to sponsor a discussion that has never been more important than it is this year as part of this year's Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute Leadership Conference.
Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Nicole Quiroga, and I'm the president of the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. It's an honor, of course, for me to be here. Our chamber is the Hispanic voice of businesses in the Washington, D.C. region, and I, like all of us, understand the problems and challenges that our businesses are facing every day, which is why I feel it's so valuable to be part of this conversation with a remarkable group of panelists that will be able to share their insights, their advice, and their guidance to small businesses as we try to find a way through this challenging time with resilience and with success. Before I introduce our wonderful panelists, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the hashtag CHCIHM20 to share this on social media. Make sure that if you have any questions along the way, to put them in the question Q&A box. Make sure to use drop down A. And then also, if you have any comments, feel free to add those to the chat box as we move forward. And now, with no further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful panel, Michelle Ruiz, CEO, BiasSync and Ruiz Strategies. Michelle?
Hi, Nicole, and hello to everyone here at this very important event. It's my pleasure to join you today as part of this very important panel, and most importantly, this very important topic for Hispanic business owners.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll continue the conversation. Right now, I'd like to introduce Jeff Rodriguez, Supply Management, Edison International. Jeff?
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Jeff Rodriguez from Southern California, Edison. Grateful and blessed to be here today.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jeff. It's nice to see you. Cici Mavico, FCP, Head of Regulatory Strategy and Special Investigations, LPL Financial. Cici?
Good morning. It's nice to be here. Honored to be here. Look forward to the dialogue.
Great to see you, Cici. And John Towle, Manager for the Small Business Program, H&R Block.
Yeah, good. Hello, good. Thanks for having us, and we're excited to be part of this amazing panel and share some insights that we've gotten here at H&R Block.
I really appreciate seeing you all. I know we've had a couple of pre-conversations. I know that you are also dedicated to the success of small businesses in your area and also nationally. I'm going to go ahead and start asking questions, and then I'll direct it through as we discuss a couple of things that I think will be relevant to this audience. So I'll start with my first question. How do you see Latino businesses contributing to your local economies before COVID? And what is your sense of the main impacts of COVID on these businesses? And for the sake of just starting the conversation, I'll go ahead and ask Michelle. You can start it. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hello again. Thank you, Nicole. Well, certainly the contribution of Hispanic-owned businesses prior to COVID pandemic has been well documented, and yet not a lot of information by a lot of people is known about the important contribution, the economic contribution, the billions contributed to the economy from Hispanic-owned businesses. Clearly, since COVID hit, as we know, Hispanics in general, as well as Hispanic business owners, have been disproportionately impacted. But yet we have a great role to play. And what I can tell you in terms of my company, you mentioned I'm CEO of two companies, that's correct, Ruiz Strategies, but also BiasSync. And in this particular instance, with the current environment that we're in, BiasSync provides large companies and government entities a way to measure and assess and mitigate the ultimate impact of unconscious bias. So under the current circumstances, actually what we have is highly desired, and in fact, we've seen tremendous amount of growth in our particular case. But what's important about that is that we are clearly a Hispanic-owned company, a woman-owned company. We understand the issues, but we've also had to adapt. And I want to share a little bit about that because I think that's important for a lot of business owners. what's important is to understand that a lot of companies are facing economic challenges of their own. We all know that a lot of companies are doing layoffs and those kinds of things, and that's being projected to continue certainly through fourth quarter of this year, possibly even first quarter of next year. So what that means as business owners is that we need to understand if they're adapting, how do we adapt in terms of our offerings, the way we operate, in terms of innovation, and frankly, look at how we can become their partner in a situation like this. And having that mindset for us has served us well. So the biggest piece of advice I give to business owners is there's always opportunity in many instances in challenging circumstances, but it requires an open-minded mindset to say, what do you need? And then look at your own business. What can you provide, or how can you adapt to provide serve them well?
That's great, Michelle. You bring up a very good point. The ability for other corporations and other companies like yourself to offer small businesses opportunities, I think is one key way that we're going to maneuver through this very difficult time. And to that end, I think about procurement and diversity and inclusion. So I wanted to jump to you, Jeffrey, if you could talk a little bit about of that. We live in a very diverse nation. We know that. How do you think you can engage the diversity and inclusion, that conversation, as you begin to make decisions and allocate your resources when addressing what Michelle said and the consequences of the pandemic?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So, so diversity inclusion, very near and dear to my heart. For Southern California Edison, we want to work with suppliers and vendors that reflect the communities we serve. Right, we're so diverse here in California, and we have goals as a company. And our goal right now is 40% of our aggregate spend that we spend on a yearly basis to be spent with diverse business enterprises. When you think about the challenges that we face here in California, right, with climate change, with modernizing our grid, with trying to electrify the transportation sector, it's that diversity of thought of diverse companies that are going to help us get there. We have very ambitious goals between now and 2030 and 2045, where it's going to be the bench strength of our suppliers that are going to help us get there as we make California and more the world a better place to live, by implementing a lot of these clean energy solutions that we're trying to execute as a company.
I appreciate that. Jeff, Cece, can you speak a little bit more on that, on diversity, on inclusion, on procurement, on opportunities?
Sure.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, Cece. Yes.
Sorry. So, in terms of diversity and inclusion and procurement, it's really thinking about being intentional. And that's something that with LPL Financial, we have really taken a step back to look at our vendors that we work with, whether it's law firms. As someone in the legal department, that's something that comes to mind right away, but also in our communities, ensuring that we leverage our diversity and inclusion efforts to help bring together advisors from different areas so that they can spread their message and bring people together. Even if you're not close in location, but you have a common theme, a common mission, and priority. And so it's not only looking at your third-party vendors, but also looking at your internal resources and encouraging that networking that will hopefully lead to greater iteration on ways to address problems like this unprecedented situation we're in today, and be able to share those lessons learned in the most productive manner possible, so we can benefit a broader and greater audience.
Thank you, Cece. Go ahead. I'm sorry, please.
Oh, yeah, and I was also going to add, so, our procurement folks, they team with our supplier diversity team, they team with diversity inclusion. We go out to many conferences to kind of share a pipeline of work, things that the utility's thinking about doing. So, we could have that big, inclusive, rich supply base, right, participating in the procurements that we put out to the marketplace.
So important. Thank you, Jeff. I wanted to let everyone know and remind everyone, if you have questions and answers, please put them in on the Q&A box. Please also select drop down A. We're getting some questions that we will address, so thank you for those who are sending them out. Of course, comments on the chat chat box, and please don't forget to use our hashtag CHCIHHM20. What do you believe, Jeff? And I'm going to, John, what do you believe small businesses should do at this time? They really are in a state of, not only are they scared and they really don't know who to turn to. Although I feel, that I'm seeing all of these corporations and all of our partners really putting together robust plans for their success. But right now, when they're maybe still stuck and they're very fearful, so they're not really understanding where to look. What do you think that they could do to become right now more proactive, more prepared, perhaps financially, to be able to move forward? John?
Yeah, absolutely. I think financial education and financial confidence is one of the biggest levers for small business success overall. At H&R Block, we know providing help and inspiring confidence in small business owners is one of our number one imperatives. And we know that small business is a lifeblood of our economy overall. So we want to provide them support and services that help them thrive. But to really answer the question directly for the small business owners, there are things that they should take action now on in recovery. And we've already mentioned the Payroll Protection Program, or PPP loans, which is a great way to gain revenues or overall funding into the business to help it maintain, as well as the Economic Injury Disaster Loan from the SBA is also another one that can grab additional cash flow for small business owners. But those are not the only ones. So I think they're critically important and can help. But even from a tax strategy, there's a couple other things for small business owners to think about. And the first one being that they can take the losses that they're incurring this year in 2020 and actually apply that to their 2019 tax return and even carry that backwards 5 years. And so what that can potentially do is lower their tax income in the previous years. That could then result in a refund or cash back to the taxpayer, the small business owner. So take advantage of what's happening today and the legislation that's given you the opportunity to get back further refunds and fewer taxes to help with your cash flow today as you continue to bridge that gap. And also just a constant reminder for small business owners, especially with low revenues, to use a cash accounting structure that helps make sure you're only getting taxed on the revenue you're getting into the business and not future revenues. So that way, if there is a downturn or your business slows, you're only going to pay tax on what you're actually incurring. And then the final one and worst case scenario here is if your business is potentially closing or is in a tough spot, you can actually sell the business tax-free under certain circumstances. So an opportunity to even get out of the business and not have to pay a large tax bill against it. Or worst case scenario, if the business is truly failing, there's even an opportunity to take that loss and use it against future incomes up to $50,000 in certain circumstances to help with that cash flow in the future.
So I appreciate that, John, and I will tell you, I'm going to open this up to the rest of the panel. This is the type of advice I think that business owners are looking for, very, very specific and very well thought out, but certainly not that they're necessarily finding that information out there. So, Michelle, you look like you had a nod of yes.
Indeed. John brought up some good points that I may add from the perspective of a serial entrepreneur. I now own my third company. I have a consulting firm. I have a science-based technology firm. So a couple of things that he brought up that I think are really important to amplify a bit more. The first is obviously consult with your CPA and your financial institutions about tax benefits that are unprecedented that are being offered in this year. And they continue to change, by the way. So continuing to communicate with your CPA, your accountant, and others is important. The other thing is related to cash flow, because John mentioned cash flow. So there's a difference, obviously, between net profitability and cash flow. And profitability looks great on paper when you're out, getting loans or raising investment capital or bringing in investors, et cetera. But cash flow is what's going to keep your business going, and you can live or die depending on cash flow. So a couple of things that I have implemented recently. The first is with respect to our companies, right? And we're certified minority-owned, women-owned companies. So we deal with the Edisons of the world and the other and large financial institutions. So look at net payment terms. I would actually go back to those contracts that you have and find out if you have net payment terms that are beyond net 45, let's say net 60, which is not unheard of in this environment, even net 90 I've heard. We don't accept contracts with net 90 payment terms. I would go back to those clients and see if you can renegotiate that. Any contracts you're currently signing, I'd pay attention to that and actually ask if the company would be willing to change their net payment terms to net 30. There are companies, and we're based here in California, Edison being one of them, and others, who actually for diverse-owned businesses will provide shorter net payment terms. You just have to ask in some instances. Sometimes the people in contracting aren't aware that you're a certified diverse-owned business. So I would look at that. The other thing is I would also offer discounts if companies in certain areas, if companies pay earlier. Because again, right now in this environment for most business owners is about having cash in so that you can meet your obligations to your vendors, to your suppliers, clearly to your employees, and those kinds of things. So I just wanted to add to that. And those are some of the things that we're paying very, very close attention to.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Jeffrey, any comments? Cece, any comments? Jeff?
Yeah, no, one other one I would add there. So I always look at, for the services that you're looking to sell, potential customers, right? Understanding customer needs, right? So, I know for the utility, for us at Southern California Edison, we submit our 3-year rate cases to the Public Utilities Commission, right? And I know other utilities do that as well that are regulated. So it provides our blueprint of things that we're looking to do as a company and also the direction where we're driving the company. So I think, having that information, and for the utilities, across the nation here, a lot of that blueprint is put out. So if you want to win business or get business with the utilities, it changes the perspective if you understand the needs of where the company wants to go. And now how do your services, meet that, right? Or, and it drives different conversation, especially if you're speaking with procurement agents that are making, decisions, right? Or about to launch an RFP or an opportunity, right? So it really changes the perspective versus here's a capability statement versus here are challenges of the utility. Here's how my company can help, solve those, or provide a solution for those challenges.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff. Cece?
And I would add, from the financial services lens, which is LPL, we have thousands of small businesses that we support. And piggybacking off of something Michelle said and Jeff, it's really asking, what can I do now in this unprecedented time, right? I've been a financial advisor for a client, and now here we are in a pandemic. And what do I know best? I know this client's financial situation. And so it's trying to look above and beyond your traditional role and fulfilling that role as a trusted advisor and going beyond and getting to know your community in ways that you haven't necessarily had to historically. And so I think it's such a great opportunity to be intentional as well as agile in how we approach the needs of those end clients. And that in of itself makes the small business much more valuable in today's market.
Thank you, Cece. I'm looking as you all are sending questions, and again, I want to encourage everybody to please send the questions in the Q&A box. Make sure that you select drop down A, but I see some that are going to be matching some of my questions that I had. So if you don't mind indulging me, I wanted to bring out one of the questions that I see, and that is, how can policymakers and leaders in the financial services sector ensure small business owners have access to capital and resources needed to succeed in crisis? John, you want to start that conversation, and we'll go from there?
Yeah, I'll start with just at H&R Block, our role is to provide insights to policymakers and really just help them make the best decisions for their constituents. We have access to a lot of research insights to consumer needs that's happening, and our role is to be able to present that in a way that makes sense so they can make the right decisions. I'll defer to the other panelists to provide their point of view on it, but that's how we want to stand, and we want to do everything we can to partner closely with that to make sure that their most informed decision made.
Great. Anyone with comments? I'll leave it open.
Certainly I'll raise one, and that is actually related to bias. There's a lot of research that shows awarding of capital, however that happens, and often the research points to financial institutions and debt and making loans. And I think that inherently in many areas of businesses and organizations, unconscious bias plays a role. And we know that there is bias related to business owners of color and also women. So if you're talking about policymakers and that audience, I would say, as we're seeing in certain states, like here we're headquartered in California, there's already laws that have passed to address unconscious bias in the fields of healthcare, law enforcement, and the judicial system, because the headline in those industries is that unconscious bias kills. So now if we look at addressing people of color in the financial industry, I think that a look at concerted ways to better the processes, because it's not about people implicitly trying to make it harder for people of color or women to get loans. It's just often inherent in the system. It's inherent in the process. So I think policymakers should look at what's happening in California and look at how we can implement the need to address unconscious bias in other industries as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Anyone else before I move on? Yes? Cece?
This is Cece. I think, and I agree, Michelle, the key is education, and by instilling a more robust diversity and inclusion knowledge base in our community, that helps better educate policy drivers, which then in turn helps drive policy in a way that will protect whether it's previously underserved or currently underserved communities, and that's key. So I think it starts with each of us in our own respective companies, whether it's the small businesses or firms like us, where we're supporting those businesses to ensure that you have that strong culture and to leverage your size, small or big, to push for that advocacy.
Thank you, Cece. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and we do have a few minutes left before I open it up for questions, with respect to organizations that you're making reference to and the internal changes that they're going to be making to serve small businesses through supplier diversity programs and things of that nature. What do you feel, and what does the panel feel? What are the current gaps? Why isn't that happening, or why didn't it happen before? What are the gaps that needs addressing now? Better now than ever, right? But what do you think happened? What gaps exist, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think, look, over time, you probably had pockets of organizations that had identified some of these opportunities for more unified advocacy and recognition of groups that really deserved and should be promoted. And so I think the way that firms have addressed this in recent years is being intentional, right? And so you've seen the creation of these diversity and inclusion councils, whether it's at the corporate level. And, LPL, we have tens of thousands of advisors out there, and we created an advisor inclusion council, which I had the pleasure of serving and to see advisors from all different areas of the U.S. come together with all different backgrounds, representing all different constituencies and groups. I think it's being intentional and bringing people together. And you had people from all different backgrounds, probably with their own agendas. And we walked out of this first year together thinking and learning so much more. With a new way of thinking that I think truly makes a difference. So it starts small, but I think having that intentional strategy is what will separate firms from others and really make the greatest impact, which is what's most important.
Anyone else on the panel want to comment?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. I think CC framed it up really well with intentional. At H&R Block, we believe that we're better together and are committed to diversity and inclusion. And that's where it starts. And it starts at the top as well. Our CEO, Jeff Jones, has signed a CEO Action of Diversity and Inclusion pledge. And then we've put into place actions to expand our hiring practices to be more inclusive. As a result, a more diverse candidate pool for all positions throughout the organization. And then we've also looked at establishing our minority-owned supplier program. So the vendors and partners we use internally and externally, looking to make sure that's a more diverse group and that we're actually thinking about it consciously than maybe we have in the past. And then finally, from an external standpoint, we will support over 500,000 small businesses through our Make Every Block Better platform. And as part of it, intentionally, we are making sure that at least 15% of those business owners are minority owned.
I'm gonna go on unless there are any other comments, because I want to get in some questions from the audience, but we just have one or two more questions that we wanted to address with you. So this is obviously something that, you know, sooner or later we hope to move out of and become stronger for it. But then now we see our younger generation, and they may not have their businesses, but they may have thought, you know, I want to be an entrepreneur. As they watch this happen, though, you know, many are filled with fear and doubt and uncertainty. So I might ask you, what would be your most pressing advice to our young potential entrepreneurs, Hispanic business owners? Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you. No, I would say, so stay resilient, right? And you just think about the times that we're in right now. I mean, the innovation is so big, right? Where, you know, you just think about as we look at future leaders, right, for organizations and, you know, leaders that are coming out of, you know, say academia now. I mean, there's so many things that I would be excited about, right? So I mentioned transportation electrification, how we're putting all these electrical vehicles on there. So when you think about mechanics and folks that would be working on these and manufacturing these, it's cool stuff, right? And, you know, I also think about like cybersecurity, all of these things that are out there and how to manage those cybersecurity threats. We'll look at the wildfires that are happening right now with climate change. I mean, how do we solve those issues, right? And it's that innovation of thought that's going to help us get there. So I think for me, it's very, very exciting times. I think there's an opportunity here for folks to really step out of their comfort zone, challenge a little bit of the social norms, right? And really drive innovation and solutions here.
That's fantastic. Michelle? Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, I would say challenging times create opportunities, so think creatively, be persistent. It can be really hard sometimes, and we're in a very difficult, unprecedented circumstances this year now. So don't take no for an answer. I always say no just means no, not now. Or unless someone actually says no, never, which rarely happens. And so be persistent, stick with it. I always like to say, build as a part of your network individuals who have achieved the level of business success that you would like to achieve, so that you can learn from them, and so build that into your network or your mentorship or your informal board of advisors. And by the way, I would say it should be diverse. It should not just to be women or people of color. It should be diverse because that helps you. So I would just say, just stick with it. I can tell you that I know it pays off after 3 businesses. I can tell you it pays off. You just got to be persistent.
I'll say that's why I love asking these questions to you all, because in each of your own rights, you have an incredible amount of experience that could certainly give credence to what you're saying. So I appreciate that, Michelle. Cece?
Yes, so I think the first thing is to remind people in this environment that we each have so much to offer. We each have a story. Owning your story, whether it's having parents coming to this country, not knowing English, and making it happen, and growing up with that strength and growth that you and fight that you witnessed growing up, and leveraging that in your own career. It's owning that story, finding that network, I agree with Michelle. Find people who inspire you, and all different people, different careers. But I suspect that there will be a common fight within those people, and learn to embrace it. Don't give up, and really just follow your passion. Whether it's utilities, as we've heard about, financial services in my world, there's something that drives each of us. And I think if you lock in and you keep pursuing it, you'll find success.
Thank you, Cece. I appreciate that. John, any thoughts on the advice for our young up and coming?
Yeah, I think Jeffrey did a great job of reminding us that to look to the future of the next need, not try to solve the needs of the past. There are lots of opportunities for us to go and build businesses around that will solve future needs or needs of tomorrow. From an advice standpoint, I think the best advice I've ever got is to plan for the worst when your business is performing the best, because that's when you'll actually have the time and resources to think about when things plateau. As entrepreneurs, we've always have the mindset, and you have to, that your business is going to exponentially grow indefinitely. That's why you started it. It doesn't always happen that way. So making sure that you're building time in to think about when it might turn or slow down and how you may react to that. So continuously seeking education, financial advice. You can do that formally or informally. You're doing it right now. If you're watching this panel, this is a great way to just take in snippets any way you can and build that network of folks that know things you don't know and learn as much from them as you can.
Thank you, John. I know, and I'm sure you feel the same, this conversation, it's such a big one, right? And we could really have this discussion for hours. I think you all are a wealth of information, and pulling our heads together, we could offer so much advice and resources to those listening. But I do appreciate the beginning of this conversation with you all. I'm going to look to a few questions from the audience that we've received. If I don't get to everybody, I can certainly share the questions with the panel, so maybe we can address them at a later time. And after that, when we're done with those questions, I'm going to ask each of you to give a small closing remark so you can start thinking about what those are going to be. But okay, I'm going to take a question from one of the audience. What can the non-small business owner do to support entrepreneurs and help them affect structural changes for future crisis? That's the non-small business owner.
So this is Cece. I'm happy to start on that. LPL Financial is a larger enterprise than, let's say, a small business, and we support the smaller businesses. And in doing that, we try and we provide the services you would typically provide to a client, whether it's technology, risk management, but in this type of environment, it's really taking the learnings and sharing them as quickly as possible to help these smaller businesses adapt and respond to this crisis, using the learnings that perhaps with greater resources, the larger enterprises can address more easily, or at least have greater insight into certain services and approaches. And I think that's just genuinely a service that larger enterprises can provide, which is, let us share our mistakes and our learnings, and hopefully the smaller enterprises can benefit from that.
Great. Thank you, Cece. Anyone else?
Maybe I could jump in here. So I know at Southern California Edison, we do hold a Meet the Primes, right? So small businesses could meet some of the prime contractors that were, supporting our businesses today, right? Whether they're DBE, non-DBE. And then we also look for subcontracting opportunities, right? When, we're looking to award a potential procurement, whether it's to a small business, a minority-owned business, or a non-DBE company, we always look for those tier 2 commitments as well. There's enough work to go around where there's there's enough pie to share here amongst all of us, where folks could maintain, be profitable, share the opportunities amongst the rest of society here, and really help provide services that support those companies that you're providing proposals on.
Great, thank you. I'll move on to another question. How have small business lending and support standards changed due to COVID, and do you feel those standards will remain eased for the foreseeable future aside from PPP? Anybody? Any comments? Okay. If we're not feeling that we want to answer that question, we can look at it at a later time. So maybe we can offer an answer to that attendee.
Nicole, I'm happy to add, although from the perspective of a business owner, I can just tell you what my experience has been. With respect to the Paycheck Protection Plan loan, our financial institution was very supportive, very quick. We were one of actually, two of my companies are one of the first companies that they approved and processed those loans. So one, have a relationship with your banking institution. Have a relationship. Don't just, do things transactionally, but actually know the people at your financial institution. And then I will say, I have heard, though now past the Paycheck Protection Plan loan, that there is some criteria, and in particular, it's really related to financial strength, right? So financial institutions, again, are reevaluating financial strength. So I think that revenue, profitability, those kinds of things are still going to be a factor. And I think, practically speaking, financial institutions are still looking at those factors and with a keen eye trying to assess their clients' businesses, and are they able and are they going to be profitable, but they also have motivation and impetus from their leadership to really help small businesses. So I think it's a little bit dependent upon the financial institution. So I would just say, based on my own experiences, is talk to your representatives at your financial institution, build a relationship, and then ask them and continue the dialogue. Stay in touch with them about what they're offering, what changes are occurring, and et cetera, so you can plan appropriately.
I will say, Michelle, that and before, and how technology is right now, you know how many people don't walk into the brick and mortar banks, right? You've been able to do everything online, and therefore you don't reinforce the relationship that you might have with your banking relationship manager. And now more than ever, myself, I really didn't have a real strong relationship where I could pick up the phone and call. So I think that's so important. And that's a wonderful piece of advice. So thank you for that. I think now more than ever, we're starting to see where in-person is mattering quite a bit, and especially moving forward. So we are getting some questions online, but I feel that some of these questions have already been addressed in some way. And I have a question or two here directly for one of our panelists. So as I said before, I'll make sure to go ahead and forward it, the personal ones and other ones that we've already discussed. And if we need to get back to that attendee, then we'll go ahead and do that. Before we close, though, I did have one question from somebody that, while is not here, wanted me to ask. I'm a small business. Let's say if I am a small business, and much of the conversation that you all are talking about, diversity and inclusion, supplier diversity, I'm not even there yet. I don't know. I'm just a very micro business. And here I am. I'm not sure who's talking or speaking my language. I'm not sure where to look. What would be your advice to those types of businesses who may or may not make it out of this? What would be your first step? What should they be doing now? John, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think there are a large number of resources available to small business owners, micro, medium, or large. Locally, that can be attainable depending through nonprofit organizations or chambers of commerce also do a great job. You might have one, Nicole, already that you might want to pitch. But even the SBA is from a national perspective something that's a great resource as well. And there are organizations, even for-profit, that provide general resources and guidance. I mean, at H&R Block, we have our COVID-19 Resource Center that's totally free, lots of guides, information, and support that's available for business owners to kind of tackle the financial changes that's happening and have those conversations and be aware of it. So I would say just start looking. I mean, there are a lot of people out there wanting to help you, and so just start taking the opportunities.
Great, thank you, John. Stacey, want to jump in?
Yeah, thinking of the role that our financial advisors play in the community, those are individuals who are closely monitoring the impacts to their clients, a lot of which might also be other small businesses. And so I think leveraging your trusted advisors in a broader way today in this environment is just another opportunity to learn from what others have experienced, the good, the bad, and the what not to do. So hopefully there are some lessons of what to do that your trusted advisors are more than happy to share. And I think that's if you think of those who are supporting your partners out there, that knowledge transfer will follow, and hopefully that's a helpful source of information.
Thank you, Cece. And as I said before, there's so much to be spoken about, and this conversation could go on, but unfortunately at this moment it can't. We have about 5 minutes left, and so as I mentioned before, if we could go around the room and we could have you all say some closing comments, and then this part will come to an end, sadly. Michelle, let's start with you.
Yes, so other than my comments earlier about being persistent, I would actually say, and I say this from a CEO and a founder's perspective, you can feel really lonely as you run your businesses as the CEO and the founder, because obviously there's a lot of information that you don't feel comfortable sharing with your teams. There are very few people that you can actually share the state of your business and your concerns and your challenges. And what I have found is being willing to be more forthright with your team members. Often we tend to default to trying to keep information close to the vest and not really state, and then our team members don't know what's happening, our employees don't know what's happening, and then if we have to make some very tough decisions, they're not really aware, and it causes a lot of disruption. I operate from the perspective of trying to be as open as possible with my employees and giving them real information about the state of the state. And when I don't have the answers, I'll say, I don't know yet. My answer today on September 16th, this is my answer today on September 16th. It may change 2 weeks from now. But I find that, especially now in challenging circumstances, we've had really good experiences with our teams rallying together and understanding where we are. I tell them what the plan is, where we're going, but things could change, but I'll keep them informed. And so I think the willingness to basically share more about the challenges that you're facing, as long as obviously doesn't impact you negatively from a proprietary perspective or HR issue, those kinds of things. But we often tend to hold things too close to the vest. And if we just let our employees in on what's happening, that can often make a big difference with respect to them feeling like they're in it with you and they're part of your team and they all rally together. And I've had really good experience with that.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Appreciate that. Jeff, your thoughts?
Well, first and foremost, wanted to say thank you to CHCI and, the rest of the panelists and also the folks in attendance for attending today. So definitely appreciate the opportunity here. And I would just say, for small businesses, stay positive, stay resilient, always take some time to reflect, look at current state, where are you at, where do you want to be, right? And, when I kind of go back a little bit to your question, the previous question on micro companies, how do you maneuver with some of the bigger utilities or some of the larger organizations out there? There's always a saying, what is it? Building from contacts to contracts, right? So establishing that. So I think networking, really selling yourself, letting folks know who you are, what services you provide, and where do you want to go. I think that goes a long way, right? And I know at least for Southern California Edison, I've worked with a lot of folks who've just reached out and cold called, and if it didn't fall within my area of responsibility, at least I connected them with the right folks, right? So it just, that one connection turned into other connections, and now those folks are able to build their network. So I would say continue to sell yourselves, stay positive in the current state. And like I said, I think there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of innovation to be had in regards to future state of how we all operate our own businesses.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. Cece, your thoughts?
Yes, so setting ourselves up for resiliency and success in this time. I agree with Michelle. Communication is key. We found that from the beginning. None of us had the answers, right, in terms of how long this would last, what the impact would be, or frankly, what it will be. Will children be back in school? and the impacts that that has on all businesses, small, medium, large. If your parents are at home and you're juggling with them running around in the background, how do we support one another? And so I think the communication here is key. It's admitting that you don't have all the answers, but the first thing that you can make sure that your team and your community knows is, I have your back. So whatever is going to come, we'll get through it together. I don't have that magic crystal ball, even though I wish I did. But the key is, we'll get through it together. We'll communicate, keep us in the know, keep you in the know. And I think the other thing I would say is giving grace to people during this time. You know, as small business owners, you're experiencing the highs, the lows with your clients. And just as you give them grace, give yourself grace. Because that's all that we can do in this time, and keep your head up. So,
thank you so much, Lucia. I appreciate that. John, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think those are amazing comments from the whole panel. Really, to recap it, and again, very, very excited to be here and appreciate the time and opportunity to. It's an unknown situation, and we don't know how long it's going to continue to last, because we're still in it, and the long-lasting impacts will go beyond today, tomorrow, and the next year, and really thinking about where that lands us next. So we had the conversation earlier. Don't look at what you've done historically as the answer, because it's probably not going to be in the next iteration of small business. And one of the best ways to empower yourself to be prepared for a business pivot or a change of industry or service model is to know, in my opinion, to know your finances. Educate yourself on how that works so you have the ability to make the change when you need to. And so I think Cece said it great. Your trusted advisors, some folks that can really help you understand that, and then make a plan around it to take the next steps and stay resilient for the worst in the future, and hopefully never again, but be ready for anything.
Thank you. I do want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for your participation. Of course, CHCI for bringing this together. I think you know, it's a hard conversation to have, and I know that because we are all passionate and in service to our small business community, we want to fix the problem and solve the problem, and we want to be everything to everybody. At least I know that we walk around with a heavy heart, but with intelligent and strong minds that you know, we've built through our experience and that we want to share. I can definitely feel the passion, and I want to thank you all for that. Every word that comes out from you is useful, valuable, and obviously based on lifetime of experiences, good and bad, which means, you know, that's what I think is very valuable to the people that are listening. So I want to thank everybody again. Again, my name is Nicole Quiroga. I'm president of the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And if there's anything anyone ever needs from us or any of the panelists, please let us know. Thank you so much, everybody.